Hello, and welcome back, family, to my channel. My name is Huddy, and tonight we're talking New York by Night. As always, this video is not scripted, and these opinions are mine and mine alone. Just a quick disclaimer before we start. Some of you may know that I am a community ambassador for World of Darkness, and so any teasers you might see for upcoming episodes of New York by Night were likely made by me, meaning I did have early access, but I recorded my thoughts, or at the very least wrote down some bullet points before moving on to the next episode. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about Season 1, Episode 7, A Thing with Fangs. Shall we? Episode 7 is different from the previous episodes as we see each of the coterie in individual scenes or stories, if you will, with Jason reminding us that vampires this young are essentially free radicals, wandering the night, attempting to just keep their feet firmly on the ground, worrying about things like where to sleep and hunt, and where to go night to night, and ultimately what to do with their unlives, while the beast whispers in their ear, urging them to forsake anything that made them human. The first scene begins with Isaac in the Bronx, specifically at the Atlas Shipping Company, which, as we learned in episode 5, is where the skeletal remains the construction workers found at the Crescent were moved to in order to keep construction on schedule. The remains, which could possibly be of Charlie, the HMS Hussar captain that Kat tasked the coterie with finding in exchange for keeping the Puttanesca off their back. While Michael circles the block in the car, Angela and Isaac head towards the building, discussing that Angela had Monica and CK from the Midnighters check the place out and reported back about a lack of activity in and around the building, as well as a lack of security, at least in the form of cameras. But there is one guard making the rounds in the exterior. Reaching the closed rollaway gate, Isaac gets the security guard's attention and uses Mesmerize to force him to take a break. And as the guard leaves, he offhandedly mentions that if he, meaning Isaac, is one of them, then he'll find Tony inside. He also casually mentions his boys, implying there are several other security guards inside the building. Rather than risk running into more guards, Isaac and Angela decide to walk through the front door and pretend like they were invited. And once inside, Isaac leaves Angela in the lobby to watch for any more people coming in or out, while he goes to investigate a nearby area, where low voices can be heard. Isaac discovers a room full of crates along with a group of people, 3 security guards, as well as an eccentrically dressed individual, barking orders at them, instructing them to get everything out of the warehouse as quickly as possible, assuring the guards that they will be reassigned to other locations. When Isaac makes himself known and attempts to claim he's here from the boss, that immediately goes over like a lead balloon, and the guards are ordered to get Isaac out of the building. Isaac uses Compel on the guards individually to force them out of his way, which was just so very hot of him. The well-dressed man, clearly firing off at least one text during this exchange, tells Isaac that he can't be from the boss because he wouldn't be here if he was, and that the warehouse, or at the very least the items within it, are Camarilla property, which makes Isaac go ooh, as in ooh, scary. God, so good. Isaac claims he just wants the bones from the Crescent, which makes the man reply that he's messing with the wrong Kindred, which basically Isaac responds with, what else is new? Again, relying on Dominate, Isaac mesmerizes him to drop the phone, which he does, and as Isaac grabs the phone and puts it in his pocket, the man jumps on a crate, produces a handgun, and likely activates Daunt, warning Isaac to leave to give him one last chance before they get here. Isaac calls for Angela and successfully stands up against this display of intimidation and threat. As Isaac activates feral weapons, something strange happens. Instead of dark, razor-sharp claws, what elongates from his hands are spiked bone talons, twice as long as his normal claws. Now what does this mean? Well, it can mean a lot. The protean power feral weapons is not limited to just claws. Members of the Ministry, for example, may identify better with a snake's proportions and therefore elongate their fangs into veritable daggers. I imagine the Tzimitzi is no different, flesh and bone crafting inherent in their blood. Isaac suddenly producing bone spikes seems expected. Of course, I believe this is actually the start of vicissitude in our young dragon, which is very exciting, and I believe this to be the case because Jason mentions how much more organic they feel. The man is horrified, calling Isaac one of them, claiming to have heard rumors that they were back, speaking of course about the Sabbat, and then says that if anything happens to him, Mr. Rafferty will hear about it, which is of course the name of Fuego's sire, which means that it is very likely he is responsible for the construction of the Crescent, something that stuck in my brain when Fuego mentioned her Cam's sire dumping her in the Bronx, the place she was so connected to. Man, this plot is thickening like sweet, sweet pudding. The man tells Isaac to hit him so he can at least prove to his boss that he tried to stop him, and Isaac swiftly sticks his boned claws into the man's chest and heaves him off the crate to the ground. While the man crawls away, Isaac and Angela begin popping open the crates with the help of Isaac's new weaponry, easily slashing through the padlocks. Eventually, Isaac finds the captain's skeletal remains and begins shoving them into a bag brought by Angela, who, by the way, is equally disturbed by Isaac's new bony friends. Before leaving, the man warns Isaac that the city belongs to the Camarilla, all of it, and he has no idea about what will happen should Khadir find him. Just the mention of Khadir had me all a-quiver. Khadir al-Azmai is the Toreador Sheriff of New York City. Born in the 1810s and raised in British-occupied India, Khadir served as a ghoul to his future Toreador sire for decades before earning his embrace. Eventually, his sire encouraged him to travel to the home of the British Empire, giving him a recommendation to the legendary Prince Mithras. Unfortunately, Khadir found London unsavory, and not wanting to return to India, Khadir made for New York. A staunch Camarilla supporter and highly capable warrior, he fought in the Battle of New York against the warring Sabbat. Afterwards, he accepted the position of sheriff and holds that title still in modern nights under Prince Panhard. In response, Isaac uses Mesmerize on the man as well as the security guards, informing them not to tell anyone that Isaac and Angela were there, and wishes them all a good evening. Unfortunately, one of the guards was able to guard against it, as they are all apparently ghouls, unbeknownst to Isaac. As they head back to the car, Isaac offhandedly tells Angela that should the coterie ask either her or Michael questions, they don't need to ask his permission to answer first, that they should just answer as they wish. Angela seems confused but agrees to it, as Michael drives off into the night. The scene moves to the financial district of Manhattan, the home of Wall Street, where Ray and Drexler sit in a cab. Ray's suit is absolutely fire, by the way. I loved it so much. Drexler is nervously talking at Ray, worried about being in Cam territory, once again name-dropping Khadir, worried about Ray going into a building with polished metal doors. Ray is cool and composed, for now anyway, and tells Drexler to just wait in the cab, drive away if he has to, exiting the vehicle while Drexler continues mumbling to himself, including saying "fuck your life" and "bing bong." We love a running joke in this house. The security guards by the doors stop Ray, holding out his hands as if expecting something. Ray snarkily asks if he wants a dance, or if he wants to tell the people inside that Reyes Malcolm is here. The second guard goes to relay that message and returns a few minutes later, informing Ray he's not expected and that someone will be out to see him in a minute. Two Kindred eventually emerge, a Ventru Ray knows named Levash, and another Ray doesn't know. But as soon as Jason described her as pale with dark baggy clothes, smoking a cigarette, I knew exactly who it was. First, a Khadir name drop, now this is Golconda, people. Levash is unwilling to let Ray inside and instead asks what he's doing here. Ray says he brings good news and they should want him around. Levash says he could help him, but he doesn't want to. The other Kindred offers Ray her cigarette. Ray, completely unaware that Kindred could smoke, takes it happily, activating the blush of life in order to partake. And this is when that other Kindred introduces themselves as Julia. The moody, sassy, and queer La Sombra, Julia Sovinsky, is the protagonist of Vampire the Masquerade: Shadows of New York. Now, since this game is amazing and I don't want to give too much away, I will only briefly cover who she is. A Polish immigrant to the United States, Julia was once an investigative journalist whose career was cut short when she was embraced into the Sombra clan, not just because Julia was now dead, but because her sire took steps to destroy her career and social life in order to prepare Julia for the embrace, although she didn't know about it until long afterwards. In the months following her embrace and orientation into Camarilla society, Julia was made the La Sombra's clan representative in New York City. A position that sounds good on paper, if Kindred Society ever put things on paper, but was mostly just there as a curiosity, someone to be supervised, by Khadir, incidentally, and given the odd job of handling the traffic of vampires who come through New York. Interestingly, Julia was tasked with the Camarilla's investigation into the mysterious death of Boss Callahan. Why she was tasked with what is seemingly such a high-value issue? Well, I suggest you go and play the story to find out. There'll be a link for the game in the description. Levash begrudgingly relents and invites Ray inside to the luxury interior of the building. Levash indicates more security guards inside and tells Ray that we won't have any more repeat incidents. Does this mean the reason, or one of the reasons, Ray fled Manhattan is because he got into a brawl with some cammie? Julia comments on Ray's great jacket, which Ray blames on his time in the Bronx. Julia then mentions she was just there talking to Baron Torque, and again, I recommend you play Shadows of New York to see this interaction in real time. Julia makes a comment about being on the right side, and Ray snarks at Julia, implying she was simply born into the right side. Julia responds that it's not her fault that he was embraced astray, and that he should take it up with them. Ray claims to not be interested in finding them. What bothers Ray is that in his mortal life, he had to claw his way to the top because of the zip code he happened to be born in. And now he's back at square one again. But all the rules are different, and he's not in control of anything, not even himself. Julia empathizes with Ray, declaring that he's not the only one to have gotten the shit end of the stick, claiming she's probationary, and that they don't let her clan play the other reindeer games. Ray asks what clan Julia is, and Levash jumps in and calls her a representative of Clan La Sombra, which doesn't seem to say anything to Ray, at least not outwardly. Levash goes on to say that someone like Julia and her clan in the Cam means that there are changes happening in the Camarilla, changes that could let Ray back into the Ivory Tower. Levash says the Ventru clan has interests in the Bronx, which we know at the very least Rafferty is constructing the Crescent. So he asks Ray what he can bring to the table, what he can give Levash to bring to the right Kindred in order to convince them to let Ray in. Ray is vague in his answer, causing Levash to warn him that he cannot play both sides. Ray says to tell whoever wants to hear it that he has intel on a Sabbat project gone wrong, referencing the White, causing Julia to become very interested. Julia asks how he knows it was from the Sabbat, and he claims that the Hecata told him, to which Julia asks, not the fucking Putanesca, to which Ray confirms. Julia then tells Ray about the La Sombra and that Tzimisce, although she pronounces it Chimchimery, which is my new favorite way to say it, and that they were the ones who founded the Sabbat, the original rebels, and that she gets looked at like she might be a spy for the Sword of Cain, something that should sound familiar to Ray in terms of Isaac. Julia asks who he's been spending his nights with, and Ray mentions Ventru, to which Levash sneers and ponders aloud if Ray should bring them along to the right side. In fact, in addition to bringing the possible Sabbat activity in the Bronx to the right ears, Levash claims that this Bronx Ventru has to be part of the deal, that he wants to know who they are, everything about them. Levash gives Ray a way to contact him, and on his way out, Ray turns to Julia and tells her it's pronounced Tzimisce, before heading back to Drexler, still waiting in the cab. The scene moves to Mott Haven in the Bronx shortly before sunrise, to Seraph and the Thin Blood Francis, who Seraph met last episode, but those who are fans of LA by Night met back in season 1 of that chronicle. They are both standing before a blank slab of concrete while Francis asks Seraph if her coterie are really her friends. Seraph asks what his beef is with other Kindred, and Francis harkens back to how Simone treated him, claims that even in LA he was treated like shit, even though it's supposed to be the Free States. I mean, Francis is skirting around the truth a little bit. They were mass producing and dealing drugs in the Valley Coteries territory, but okay, whatever. Francis claims that Darby and Frida, his bandmates of the Bronx Cheer, are actually good ones, and that they don't care about what his lineage is, where his blood comes from. In fact, he talks about transcending to something beyond clan, but Kindred would have to give up their humanity to do so. This conversation is taking a dangerous turn. Seraph and Francis begin their art experiment, with Francis slicing his arm open, filling a soda can with his blood. Seraph grabs one of her spray cans, sprays some paint in there, and shakes it up, while Francis mulls over how to cook this particular recipe, explaining to Seraph the different distillation methods Thin Bloods use to perform their alchemy, which are Athanor Corporis, where alchemists use their own body as the Athanor or alchemical furnace, Calcinatio, where the alchemist uses the blood of a human as the Athanor, adjusting their biophysical state by means of emotional pressure and spoken incantations, and Fixatio, where the alchemist uses a conventional Athanor such as a pressure cooker or a kiln. Francis asks Seraph where her inspiration comes from, whether it's something in the moment or something planned, and Seraph says it's both, so Francis suggests she pours some of her blood in the can, which she does, while he collects some rusted nails and begins chatting more about humanity, telling Seraph all the burden and hang-ups from when they were mortal is gone. He talks about leaving LA and going to Detroit, where he met other Thin Bloods who encouraged him to change his perspective, to stop thinking about himself as a person. Again. Dangerous, scary territory, but let's see where he goes with this. Into the can goes some of Seraph's eyeshadow and a joint she got from Quark, and Francis downs it with a grimace. While they wait for the ingredients to cook, Francis asks Seraph about Shark Boy, meaning Ray, who frenzied in the pit last episode, admiring him for losing himself to the beast, abandoning the mortal coil. Francis talks about his own beast, saying he's on a first-name basis with it. Seraph asks how he cultivated such a relationship with his beast, and Francis shows her blackened burned scars across his abdomen. And at this point, there can no longer be any doubt that Francis is a member of the Sabbat, and a follower of the Path of the Sun. The Sabbat we've talked about before, but again very briefly, the Sabbat in modern nights are a medieval death cult, a fanatical shock force where the idea of clan has been almost entirely stripped away from their identities. Because for the Sabbat, it all comes down to being unapologetically a vampire, or a Cainite, as some call themselves. Paths shape how Sabbat vampires interact with the world, and how they wield their gifts of Cain to forge the world into their preferred image. One of those paths is called the Path of the Sun, and it's almost exclusively followed by Thinbloods, as they consider themselves the only vampires truly free from the taint of the antediluvians, the founders of the clans. Fans of LA by Night will remember references to the Book of Nod, specifically to the Thin-Blooded, stating that when Thinbloods are present, Gehenna will soon be upon you. Followers of the Path of the Sun agree. It is the time of the Thin Blood, and its followers are often easily recognized by the burn scars and disfigurements they wear as badges of defiance and sufferance, boldly forcing themselves into sunlight, which has a diminished effect on Thinbloods. Their traditional ethics include let neither one's mortal nor Cainite heritage limit one's potential, and destroy Cainites but never consume them, leaving oneself untainted. Followers of this path are also relentless proselytizers and seek to convert their fellow Sabbat as well as on-the-outs Anarchs and disillusioned Camarilla fledglings. Thinblood Sabbat are my favorite Sabbat. I've said it multiple times in multiple places, and I even included them in my Chronicle Blood on the Grand Strand.
Now why would you want to hurt a man who did nothing but help you and the other Thinbloods?
Because he's kind. Cattle, they don't matter.
And who taught you that?
Once you realize that giving into the beast sets you free, it's a whole new world. I cannot overstate how ecstatic I was to watch this slowly unfold as Seraph is blissfully unaware of the danger she is in. Francis tells her the recipe is ready. He slices open his palm and tells Seraph to do the same, then grab his hand and spray paint with the other, losing a point of willpower damage as her mind and soul is overwhelmed by the strange alien feelings Francis is pouring into her and through her. Seraph begins painting, but she's not entirely sure that she is solely in control, and in fact she isn't, and what they create is a beautiful but unsettling image of a sun. Francis, with his still cut open palm, walks up to it and places a bloody print at the end of every sunray. How fitting. Seraph then takes Francis on the train into Manhattan, heading to her mother's art gallery, where her mother is there, even at this early hour. She immediately asks Seraph if Argus is with her, nervously looking around. And when Seraph denies it, she then tells Seraph how much she has missed her. Seraph admires Alicia, her mother, for a moment, remembering that she has always looked the same due to Argus's blood keeping her young and vibrant all these years. And then she shows her the journal Argus had left for her, asking her mother if she knows what it says. Her mother responds with "looks like Greek" and suggests she Google it, and then suggests that Seraph just come home so they can be a family. Seraph tells Alicia that she's going to get her away from Argus, but her mother ardently refuses, claiming that she doesn't want to go, and that she's going to have to tell him that Seraph was there. Alicia offers Seraph her old bedroom upstairs, and she agrees to stay there. Francis decides to take off and tells her that he will check the cookbook for any ways to break blood bonds, and suggests she meet up with another Thinblood named Elia, who might be able to help her become best buddies with her beast. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Seraph, my darling, my angel, run. Block him everywhere, on everything, permanently. Our final scene moves to Fordham University, the Rose Hill campus in the Bronx. Here we see Fuego, eyes dripping with blood tears, talking to her cousin, a person in a Yankees hat named Caden. It's very clear from the get-go that Caden knows that Fuego is a vampire, but that he himself is mortal, a dangerous masquerade breach. Caden asks if she's going to go to the first night's baseball game with the rest of their friends and family, but she declines, stating that she no longer feels good around other people. Caden reaches out his hands to grasp hers, and she quickly activates the blush of life, allowing her hands to be as warm as his, as warm as they were in life. Khadir tells Fuego that she always took care of him growing up and that they can't believe that she's so different now. Fuego tells him that she remembers that she cares for him, that she remembers all the things she cared about, but it's just a memory. She can't feel it in the same way she did when she still walked in the sunlight. Khadir talks to Fuego about the monster in the Bronx, and Fuego assures him that she's working on it. And she also warns him against werewolves, which she is like 90% sure are also real. She explains that the monster is someone like her, someone who forgot too much of their humanity too fast, and became nothing more than a beast. Fuego warns Khadir away from her, away from everyone like her, because she doesn't have all the answers, and it's dangerous to ask too many questions. So she doesn't know how she can protect him with all these unknowns. Khadir seems more concerned about her than about himself, and Fuego admits that she crossed a line, likely referring to her executing the security guard at the Crescent, and that a part of her regrets it, and a part of her doesn't. And she's scared and confused. Abrea absolutely killed this performance. Her range is incredible, and I was crying with her. That empathy was pouring out through the screen. Before leaving, Fuego hugs Khadir, getting lost in it for a while, the memories of their shared childhood flashing before her eyes, warning him that there are scarier things than her out there. When Khadir leaves, Fuego sits on the steps of the academic building and pulls out the note from Rafferty, clutching it to her chest. Jason then talks to Fuego about her humanity, giving her 2 stains for the atrocity she had committed. But her remorse roll is a success, preventing Fuego from heading down that downward spiral she has been warned about so many times before. If you haven't already, please go follow The World of Darkness on Twitch and YouTube, and if you can, sub to those channels as well. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to me and let me know your thoughts on Episode 7, A Thing with Fangs, in the comments. As always, I'll see you in the next one.